And then there's the version God responds to. People respond to performance. God responds to posture. People react to outcomes. God reads intentions. You've been worried that what's happening around you is louder than what's happening within you, but God has never been distracted by chaos. He is not intimidated by confusion. He is not fooled by appearances. Scripture reminds us that man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. And that means even when your life looks messy, even when things feel unfinished, even when you don't have the words to explain what you're going through, God is still responding to the truest part of you. The part that keeps hoping, the part that keeps trusting, the part that still believes he can do what no one else can. You have to understand that God is not waiting for you to get it all right before he moves. He is not holding back because your life isn't polished enough. He is responding to the sincerity of your surrender. Some of you have been praying big prayers quietly because disappointment taught you not to say them out loud anymore. You didn't stop believing, you just stopped announcing it. And God says, I saw that. I saw you choose faith when it would have been easier to choose bitterness. I saw you stay kind when life gave you reasons to harden your heart. I saw you keep showing up when nothing seemed to change. That matters to God. There are moments when it feels like your situation is speaking louder than your faith. Bills are due, doors are closed, relationships are strained, and the noise of reality keeps trying to convince you that nothing is moving. But God does not move by volume. He moves by alignment. He listens for the sound of a heart that still trusts him when evidence is lacking. And that kind of faith doesn't always shout. Sometimes it shows up as endurance. Sometimes it looks like obedience when nobody is clapping. Sometimes it feels like waking up one more day and choosing not to give up. You've been questioning whether your prayers are effective because the outcome hasn't changed yet. But effectiveness in the kingdom is not measured by speed, it's measured by substance. God is more concerned with who you're becoming than how fast things shift. Because if the miracle arrives before your heart is ready, it can overwhelm you instead of elevate you. That's why God often works deeper before he works loud. He tends to the root before he touches the fruit. He strengthens the inside before he transforms the outside. What you call waiting, God calls preparation. What you call silence, God calls strategy. There are conversations happening in heaven about you that you are not privy to yet. Doors aligning, people shifting, timing syncing. God is not ignoring your prayers. He is answering them in layers. And one of those layers is making sure your heart stays soft while life stays hard. Because a soft heart is fertile ground for a sudden miracle. You didn't imagine the promise. You didn't make it up to comfort yourself. God planted it there, and he guards what he plants. Even when storms come, even when doubt creeps in, God knows how to protect the seed of faith in your heart. He knows how to keep it alive when circumstances suggest it should have died by now. That's why the enemy keeps attacking your emotions and your thoughts, because if he can get you to question your heart, he can make you doubt your miracle. But hear this clearly, God does not forget the ones who keep trusting him in private. He does not overlook the prayers prayed through tears. He does not dismiss the faith that had to fight just to survive. Your heart has been speaking on your behalf this entire time. Every time you chose hope over despair, obedience over comfort, trust over fear, your heart testified for you in heaven. And now there is a shift coming that won't require your striving, a move of God that won't need your explanation, a moment where suddenly what was stuck starts moving, what was delayed starts accelerating, what was impossible starts unfolding, not because you forced it, but because God decided the timing was right, because he knows your heart can handle what your hands are about to receive, because he knows the miracle won't replace him, but point you back to him. Because he knows that when it happens, you won't say luck did this or coincidence did this, but only God could have done this, because he knows that even now, even in uncertainty, your heart is still reaching for him, still believing he is faithful, still trusting that what he promised is on the way, even if you can't see how, even if you don't know when, even if all you can do right now is hold on and whisper, God, I trust you. You've been calling it a delay, but God has been calling it development. You've been counting the days, measuring the time, wondering why it hasn't happened yet, while God has been measuring depth. Because in the kingdom, timing is not about convenience, it's about capacity. God is not slow, and he is not forgetful. He is intentional. And when he allows a promise to take time, it's not because he changed his mind, it's because he's strengthening your foundation. Some blessings require more than excitement to sustain them. They require maturity, discernment, humility, and endurance. And those things are not rushed, they are grown. You thought the delay meant God was reconsidering, but the delay was God considering you. Considering what the blessing would demand from you, considering what exposure would do to your character, considering what success might awaken in your heart. God loves you too much to rush you into something that could damage you if it arrived too soon. So he lets time work on you. He lets pressure shape you. He lets waiting teach you lessons that applause never could. There are things you learn about God only in the in-between, only when prayers are unanswered, only when doors stay closed longer than expected, only when faith has to survive without feedback. That's where depth is built. That's where roots grow, and roots grow in darkness, underground, unseen. Nobody celebrates roots, but without them, nothing stands. God has been working beneath the surface of your life, strengthening what no one else sees, because what he's preparing to do publicly requires private stability. You've been asking God to move the mountain, but he's been moving you, expanding your patience, sharpening your discernment, teaching you how to trust him without conditions. Because shallow faith needs constant reassurance, but deep faith rests even when answers are delayed. God is not just interested in giving you what you asked for. He's interested in shaping who you are when it arrives. Some of you have been frustrated because you did everything right and still had to wait. You prayed, you fasted, you obeyed, you showed up, and yet nothing seemed to shift. But obedience does not eliminate process. It qualifies you for it. The delay was not punishment, it was preparation. God was building resilience in you so that when the promise shows up, you don't crumble under its weight. There are blessings that attract attention, and attention attracts opinions. There are miracles that change your environment, and change exposes your heart. God knows what comes with what you've been asking for. He knows the warfare attached to it. He knows the responsibility attached to it. He knows the pressure attached to it. So he uses the delay to fortify you, to anchor you, to make sure that when the winds blow, you don't lose yourself trying to keep what he gave you. You thought waiting meant nothing was happening, but waiting is where trust becomes real. Anybody can praise when prayers are answered quickly. Anybody can believe when the evidence is obvious. But waiting strips faith down to its purest form. It forces you to decide whether you trust God for who he is or only for what he does. And that decision changes everything. God has been deepening your prayer life, not by giving you more words, but by teaching you how to sit in his presence without guarantees, teaching you how to worship without timelines, teaching you how to hope without deadlines. That kind of faith is not flashy, but it is powerful. It doesn't need constant confirmation because it knows who God is. You've been tempted to rush the process, to force doors open, to settle for substitutes because the waiting got uncomfortable. But God blocked those shortcuts on purpose, not because he wanted to frustrate you, but because shortcuts rob you of strength. Anything you get before you're ready becomes something you have to maintain in your own power. God wants what he gives you to be sustained by grace, not stress. There are things God is protecting you from that you can't see yet. relationships that would have distracted you, opportunities that would have drained you, success that would have inflated you too quickly. God sees the full picture, not just the part you're desperate for. And sometimes love looks like delay because love prioritizes longevity over speed. You've been interpreting the delay as rejection, but heaven never rejected you. Heaven has been refining you. Fire doesn't destroy what's valuable. It reveals it. Pressure doesn't eliminate purpose. It clarifies it. The longer the wait, the deeper the work. And the deeper the work, the stronger the outcome. There's a reason your faith looks different now, quieter, stronger, less performative. You don't announce everything anymore. You don't explain yourself to everyone anymore. You don't need validation the way you used to. That's not discouragement, that's depth. God has been pulling you out of shallow waters where approval matters more than obedience and leading you into deeper waters where trust is your lifeline. The delay taught you how to depend on God instead of the outcome. It taught you how to keep loving even when life didn't give back. It taught you how to stay obedient when nobody was watching. That kind of faith doesn't fade when circumstances change. It stands. And when God finally releases what he promised, it won't just bless you, it will stabilize you. You won't lose yourself in it. You won't forget God because of it. You won't need it to define you because the delay already did the defining work. It shaped your character. It grounded your heart. It deepened your faith. So don't despise the season that slowed you down. Don't resent the time that stretched you. Don't regret the waiting that refined you. Because what feels like a pause is actually a strengthening. What feels like silence is actually instruction. What feels like delay is actually divine development. And when the miracle comes, it won't arrive fragile. It will arrive rooted. It will arrive sustained. It will arrive at the right time with the right strength and the right version of you who can carry it without losing the God who gave it. You've been measuring your faith by what people can see, but God has been measuring it by what you keep believing when no one is watching. There is a kind of faith that doesn't announce itself, doesn't post updates, doesn't need validation, but it keeps breathing even when it's bruised. That hidden faith is not weak, it's refined. It's the faith you carry when you're too tired to explain yourself. The faith that survives disappointment without becoming bitter. The faith that keeps choosing God even after unanswered prayers. And God responds powerfully to that kind of faith. Some of the strongest believers don't look strong at all. They look ordinary. They look quiet. They look like they're just trying to make it through the day, but inside them is a trust that has been tested by fire. They've seen what happens when hope is delayed. They've felt the ache of waiting. They've wrestled with doubt and still decided not to walk away. That faith doesn't shout, but it stands. And heaven pays attention to what stands. You assumed that because your faith wasn't loud, it wasn't effective. You thought because you weren't confident every day, because you didn't always feel powerful, because you questioned sometimes that God might overlook you. But God does not need your faith to be perfect. He needs it to be present. Even faith that's trembling still reaches heaven. Even faith that's tired still moves God. Even faith that's quiet still carries authority. There are miracles God performs not because faith was impressive, but because it was persistent. Because it showed up again, because it didn't quit, because it stayed rooted even when emotions fluctuated. The enemy wants you to believe that if you don't feel strong, you aren't strong. But strength in the kingdom doesn't come from emotion. It comes from endurance, from staying connected when it would be easier to disconnect, from trusting God when trust in him doesn't come with immediate relief. Hidden faith is forged in private battles. Battles you didn't ask for, seasons you didn't choose, moments when all you could do was whisper a prayer because you didn't have the strength to shout one. Those prayers mattered, Those tears mattered. Those moments where you chose not to give up mattered more than you realized. Heaven recorded them, God counted them, and they activated something bigger than you could see at the time. You didn't see results right away, so you assumed nothing was happening. But faith doesn't always produce immediate evidence. Sometimes it produces alignment first. Sometimes it produces inner healing before outward breakthrough. Sometimes it produces restraint, wisdom, and discernment before visible miracles. God often works invisibly before he works visibly, because what he does in secret sustains what he reveals in public. You've been faithful in ways no one applauded, faithful in prayer when answers were delayed, faithful in obedience when it cost you relationships, faithful in integrity when compromise would have been easier, faithful in kindness when life was unkind to you. Those moments were seeds, and seeds don't announce themselves when they're planted. They disappear, they go underground, they look like loss before they look like life. Hidden faith often feels unrewarded because it's not immediately celebrated. But celebration is not the measure of significance. God specializes in rewarding what others overlook. He honors faith that keeps going without recognition. He responds to trust that survives in silence. And when he moves, he doesn't do it halfway. He does it suddenly. He does it visibly. He does it in ways that make people ask questions you don't have to answer. There are miracles coming that will shock people who didn't know you were believing, people who thought you had given up, people who assumed you were done dreaming. They didn't see the conversations you had with God late at night. They didn't see the way you kept hoping quietly. They didn't see the faith you carried while managing disappointment, but God saw it all. And he is not unjust to forget what you invested in him. Hidden faith keeps you anchored when life becomes unstable. It keeps you from reacting impulsively. It keeps you from settling prematurely. It keeps you from becoming cynical. And that anchoring is what allows God to move through you without you being destroyed by what he releases. Because visible miracles require stable hearts. Public breakthroughs require private trust. You thought faith had to look confident to be effective. But some of the most powerful faith is afraid and obedient at the same time. Faith that says, I'm scared, but I'm still trusting. I'm unsure, but I'm still praying. I'm tired, but I'm still believing. That kind of faith disarms the enemy because it refuses to be defined by emotion. It chooses obedience over certainty. There were moments you almost quit believing, moments you questioned whether it was worth it, moments you felt foolish for hoping again, but you didn't stop, and that matters. Faith that keeps going despite disappointment activates grace that overwhelms resistance. God moves when faith refuses to die, even if it has to limp forward. You've been comparing your journey to people who seem to get results faster, people whose faith looks louder, more confident, more public, but you don't know what their faith hasn't been tested by yet. You don't know what their roots look like. God is not impressed by speed. He's committed to sustainability, and hidden faith builds roots deep enough to support visible miracles without collapsing under them. There is a reason your miracle hasn't needed your advertisement. There is a reason God didn't ask you to promote your faith. He's been cultivating something authentic, something resilient, something real, because when your miracle comes, it won't be something you have to convince people about. It will speak for itself. The miracle God is preparing will validate the faith you carried in silence. It will justify the tears you cried alone. It will honor the obedience nobody noticed. It will reveal that what looked like nothing happening was actually God building something unstoppable. And when it shows up, it will be clear that it wasn't hype that produced it. It wasn't noise that activated it. It wasn't performance that sustained it. It was hidden faith, steady faith, enduring faith that trusted God when there was no evidence, that believed him when the situation contradicted the promise, that stayed connected when letting go would have been easier, that kept hoping quietly. that kept trusting privately, that kept standing even when everything else felt like it was falling apart. You've been frustrated with the timing because you thought God was late. But what if God has been precise all along? We live in a world that celebrates speed, but God prioritizes safety. He doesn't rush what he values, and he doesn't release what he hasn't secured. Timing in God's hands is not about convenience, it's about protection. You've been asking why now feels slower than expected, why doors didn't open when you were ready, why opportunities slipped past you even though you were qualified. But God's timing is not designed to tease you. It is designed to preserve you. There are blessings that look beautiful from a distance but are dangerous if mishandled. There are promises that feel exciting but require wisdom to steward. God knows what comes with what you've been praying for. He knows the pressure, the responsibility, the exposure, the spiritual warfare attached to it. And because he knows your heart, he knows exactly when you can receive it without losing yourself in it. Timing is not just about arrival, it's about survival. God refuses to give you something that would cost you your peace, your identity, or your relationship with him. You thought you were ready because you were eager, but eagerness is not the same as readiness. Eagerness says, give it to me now. Readiness says, I can carry it without it carrying me. God waits for readiness. He waits until the promise will be a blessing and not a burden, until it will enhance your life instead of exhausting it, until it will draw you closer to him instead of distracting you from him. There are moments when God delays because he sees what you don't. He sees the version of you that could be overwhelmed by sudden success. He sees the cracks that pressure would expose. He sees the insecurity that applause might amplify. He sees the fatigue that responsibility could bring. So he uses timing to reinforce you, to heal you, to stabilize you, because a protected blessing lasts longer than a rushed one. God's timing also protects the promise itself. Some things cannot survive premature exposure. Dreams can be crushed by criticism. Callings can be damaged by comparison. Miracles can be misunderstood when revealed too early. God shields what he plans to reveal. He hides it until the environment is right, until the season is right, until the people around you are right. And sometimes that means saying no now so he can say yes later in a way that cannot be undone. You've been trying to force outcomes because waiting feels like wasted time. But in the kingdom, waiting is not passive, it is active protection. God is aligning circumstances, softening hearts, closing doors that look good but lead to dead ends, removing people who would mishandle your future. You didn't lose anything when those things didn't work out. You were spared. Think about how many times you were disappointed by a door that didn't open, only to later realize it would have cost you more than it gave you. God was protecting you before you knew you needed protection. His timing saved you from regret you never had to experience, from stress you never had to carry, from relationships you never had to recover from. You assumed that if God loved you, he would hurry, but love does not rush what it wants to keep. Love is careful. Love is thoughtful. Love considers consequences. God's timing is proof of his care. It is evidence that he is not just interested in blessing you, but in keeping you whole while he does. There are promises that require internal alignment before external manifestation. God waits until your heart can handle what your hands are about to hold, until you won't compromise yourself to maintain it, until you won't depend on it more than you depend on him. Timing ensures that the promise doesn't replace the provider. You've been learning discernment in the waiting, learning when to say no, learning when to be still, learning how to trust God instead of control outcomes. That learning is not random. It is equipping you to steward what's coming, because once the door opens, things move quickly. Once the miracle shows up, expectations increase. Once the blessing manifests, demands multiply. God uses timing to prepare you for the acceleration that follows obedience. You didn't miss your moment. You weren't overlooked. You weren't forgotten. God simply refused to let your future be fragile. He refused to let your miracle arrive unprotected. He refused to let you step into something that would require more than you had the strength to give at that time. That is not delay, that is divine care. Some of the frustration you felt was actually God slowing you down to save you from burnout. Some of the resistance you experienced was God building boundaries around your calling. Some of the closed doors were God saying, not like that, not yet, not there. And even when you didn't understand it, his timing was working in your favor. You've grown in ways you didn't notice, because growth in patience doesn't feel powerful. Growth in wisdom doesn't feel exciting. Growth in restraint doesn't feel rewarding. But those qualities